for this discussion about the Arizona Education Progress Meter that we have had since 2016, I believe. So we're going to have an in-depth conversation about the progress meter today. And so to start, I'd like to introduce our president and CEO, Rich Nickel, who will start us off.
Thanks, Donna. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully everything works the way we want it to. Terrific. So I am Rich Nickel. I'm the president and CEO here at Education Forward Arizona. And I'm going to walk you through just a couple of slides on what we do here. And certainly one of the things that we do is that we're a partner with the Center for the Future of Arizona on the Arizona Education Progress Meter, which we biasedly probably think is probably the best progress meter that Center for the Future of Arizona partners on. So I'll leave that to the experts, though. Let me give you just 2 minutes really about some of what we do here at Education Forward Arizona. So our mission, and I'd say this is our aspirational mission, is really to advocate for and act upon improvements in our education system that are going to advance the quality of life for all Arizonans. We think that's the important part here. It's not education for education's sake, right? I mean, we are really interested in this because we know without increasing our attainment rate, without high quality K-12 preparation, then the future of Arizona doesn't look as bright. We do that in 3 ways. One of that is through our voice and policy work, our voice work and our policy work. The Education Progress Meter really falls under those 2 broad categories. We use that to drive our priorities from a policy and advocacy standpoint. And we also use that to give people in the community voice when they're thinking about strategies that are important to their communities. A lot of you today may know us for some of the programmatic work that we do, which is also robust. You know, as we think about that, and you may think about some brands that you have in your schools or other programs you've heard about of the scholarship side, you know, one of these programs might ring a bell with you. You know, I'm happy to announce this year, for instance, if you look at kind of the top left of your screen there, our scholarships and success services as we enter the academic year are going to impact 550 students from Arizona, almost without exception, all from low-income backgrounds, most of them going to school here in Arizona. And we're going to provide about $2.5 million for those 550 people this year. So that's just an example of what we do. We also are engaged in many other ways all across the state with schools, students, and people who are teaching and helping our students learn. The reason we're so interested in this is because we know that we have everything to gain here in our state if we get more people through their K-12 education, get them to enroll in post-secondary at higher rates, get them to complete their post-secondary journey at higher rates, and then go on to be part of our attainment goal. And we basically have a 500,000 degree and certificate shortage today. You're going to see some of that in the information that's presented in the progress meter discussion. And the upside is if we can get that 500,000 certificates and degrees by 2030 that we need, and we do that by increasing enrollment rates in post-secondary, there's literally $5 billion that our state can bring to our economy for each and every cohort in which that happens. So we think that's pretty important stuff. You'll hear us talking about, and Terry's probably going to bring this up too today, you know, a campaign that we have launched called Everything to Gain that is really over the next 3 years going to take a deep dive look at the data, the information resources that people need to make really great decisions about whether or not some type of post-secondary education after high school is good for them, and also to really understand the tremendous value to the individual communities in the state if we have more people that increase their educational attainment rates. So the most important piece of this entire presentation I just did is that you've got your phones out anyway. I'm sure you're probably texting somebody else while you're listening. Shoot a picture of the QR code here and sign up to get the information about the Everything to Gain campaign. It's going to include some special advocacy alerts that you're going to get. It's going to give you access to us and our staff to come out and talk to groups about why we have everything to gain in the state by promoting education and other special features that you'll find by being there. But we need you on the Everything to Gain team, and we hope you will sign up to do that. Enjoy today's information. I'm sure I was the least interesting part of it because I know who's coming up next. And if you ever need to reach out to me directly, you can certainly do that by going to our website, and my phone number and email are out there. Enjoy the rest of the hour.
Thanks, Rich. At this point in time, I want to introduce our major guest speaker, because he's the one that does all the data for our progress meter, along with 85 other progress meters at the Center for the Future of Arizona. Ian Dowdy is the Director of Strategic Data Initiatives at the Center for the Future of Arizona. And he's going to talk to us today about the data in the Arizona Education Progress Meter, where it comes from, how the program meter works, or how the progress meter works, and how folks can use the data. So take it away, Ian.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Rich, for your excellent introduction and the work that you all have been doing over at Education Forward Arizona on the Everything to Gain project has been really instrumental in really helping our community understand the value of a post-secondary education and what it might mean for our economy. So thank you for that great work, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to share today some of the nerdiest stuff that you could possibly imagine. So, I don't know how many people are in the room now, but I fully expect there to be about half as many when I'm done with my 20 minutes. But maybe I have some detail-oriented data people, who will actually hear me out. So let's find out. Well, I'm Ian Dowdy, Director of Strategic Data Initiatives at the Center for the Future of Arizona, and it's really nice to be here with all of you today. The mission for the Center for the Future of Arizona is to bring Arizonans together to build a stronger and brighter future for our state. We do that in a lot of ways, but mainly we do a lot of listening. We bring people together to understand what are the things that they're concerned about, what are their priorities for the future. Then we share trusted data like our progress meters data, and also data from our survey work, which include a robust survey called the Gallup Arizona survey we do every 10 years, and also other types of surveys like the Arizona Voters Agenda that many of you probably saw news about this last fall. So those data are really useful at kind of guiding us in our future. And our goal is to really bring critical issues to public attention and to work with communities and leaders to solve these problems. This is a big state, a very diverse state, and we feel that often these solutions are best solved in the local community. So bringing information to the community is critical to do that. Foundational to all of our work is something that we call the Arizona We Want. And this is a shared vision of success around what matters most. And this is informed by all of those listening activities that we do and all of that survey work. And in Arizona We Want, we have identified some really key sort of things that Arizonans are most concerned about. So as you can see, that's comprised of kind of these three large buckets: our survey research, our progress meters, and also our impact initiatives. We actually have a series of initiatives that work out there in the community, in education, in workforce, and in civic engagement. And some of our programs are shown on the screen, including the Beat the Odds School Leadership Academy in education, Pathways to Prosperity, school participatory budgeting, and then of course in workforce and civic engagement, we also have initiatives as well. Here is the key message that CFA likes to share, and that is that we agree, believe it or not, on the most important issues for Arizona's future. And foundational to that is sort of the 7 shared public values. And those are agreed upon by 70% or more of Arizonans, as we find in our survey research. And they also have strong support across geography, across education level, political affiliation, race and ethnicity. These are things that we agree on, and they are things that CFA believes should be priorities to address within our communities. Those things are education at the top, health and well-being, jobs and economic opportunity, environment and sustainable future, civic engagement and leadership, fair, just, and equitable systems, and immigration reform. All of those are things that are key priorities for our state and are shared public values. Now, let's talk about education, because I know that's why you're here. 84% of Arizonans believe that a highly educated and skilled population is good for our state's economy. And we saw some of those numbers that Rich showed just a little bit ago. The challenge is only 26% of Arizonans agree that our K through 12 public education is high quality. So that disconnect is a problem. And that's one reason why the progress meter is in place, to help us understand where we're at and where we're going. And that's true for all of our progress meters. As was mentioned, we have 85 metrics across 8 broad categories, and including the 8 within the education progress meter. And so some of those things include job growth, wages, volunteerism, civic participation, voter participation, health, a whole range of things that we measure within the progress meters. But I always like to say, and I think Rich mentioned this earlier as well, the education progress meter is the one that is the most robust and most used. Certainly the one that has been most broadly adopted across the state. And that's because this has been an initiative and partnership with an organization that has stewarded and adopted and moved forward these data in ways that other progress meters have not. And Education Forward Arizona is that partner organization. We co-developed the education progress meter. It was a fantastic, significant amount of work back in 2015 and 2016, if I recall, to build it. And it is still, the one that has the most overall kind of, adoption statewide. It is the guidepost for Arizona's education policy in so many ways. The data are trusted, they are referenced frequently, and we're so proud to be entrusted with that responsibility to maintain the data and to keep it up to date. So here's a snapshot. I'm not going to dig into this because I think Terry's going to do some of that. But here's where we are in Arizona. If you look at the far left side of this table, you see where we are in 7 of those 8 metrics: quality early learning, 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, high school graduation, opportunity youth, post-high school enrollment, post-secondary attainment. So you can see where we are. And then if you look to the far right, the bold numbers are the goals that were set by education leaders across the state. And those numbers are a long way from where we are. And that's been a challenge for us. I think recently Amanda Burke from CFA and Rich were on Arizona Horizon talking about the college going rate and how that has not been moving forward in a positive direction recently. And the other thing that we know is that there are disparities across the data with different races, ethnicities, language proficiency, and so forth. And so those disparities give us a good sense of some areas where we can focus. So I'll let Terry talk more about those disparities, but let's talk about the data, where it comes from, and how it can be used. Well, the progress meters make it possible to assess how we're doing. I mentioned this. But what's really important about this is that we want to not just see where we are as a state, but we want to see how do we measure up as a community at the local level, maybe at the city level, at the county level, even at the school district level, with our peers. Are there opportunities for us to learn from others who are doing really, really well? Or maybe we're not doing so well as a community, and we need to focus more energy on addressing those things. That is what the value of the progress meter is, and why it is done in the way that it is, so that we can effectively compare ourselves with others within our state and our region. So let's talk about the data kind of on a measure by measure basis, because I get a lot of questions about, well, where do the data come from? How are they analyzed? What does it mean? So I'm going to try to break that down in very general terms. I can also make this slide deck available to to Education Forward to share out. We do provide a methodology statement on both of our websites that provide these details, but it's very helpful, I think, to just go over it in general terms. So our first metric is quality early learning. This is a measure of how many 3- and 4-year-olds are enrolled in a quality early learning setting. That is defined on the screen, as you can see, as with meeting certain criteria. So we take the data are provided to us from Read On Arizona. They take the overall number of 3- and 4-year-olds that show up in the census, and they calculate, well, what percentage of those are in these programs. And so that percentage indicates where we are. I think we're at 21% right now at 3- and 4-year-olds in a quality early learning setting. And so that's kind of where that data come from. 3rd grade reading and 8th grade math, these are analyzed at CFA specifically. We use data from Arizona Department of Education. 3rd grade reading is the percent of 3rd grade students who score proficient or highly proficient on their AASA 3rd grade reading, or excuse me, 3rd grade English language arts assessment. As you may know, that the name of that test has changed several times over the last few years. So this most recent year, it's AASA. Previously, it was AZM2, and before that, it was AZ Merit. And so, even though the name has changed, we allow the data to be compared year over year. 8th grade math is a similar story. It's the percent of 8th grade students who score proficient or highly proficient on their AASA 8th grade math assessment. And so one thing you'll see in these sort of yellow boxes as I work through these slides is a couple of things. What geography are the data available at? So school district, city, county, and state for many of our data. And so you can dig down into the data. But also, what are the suppression rules? This is pretty important because data are only allowed to be released to the public if they meet certain requirements. And with 3rd grade reading and 8th grade math, you have to have more than 10 students in that cohort or more than 10 students who pass in order to count the data or to show the data publicly. And so I'll talk a little bit about that later on in the even more nerdy part of my presentation. But I do want to raise your awareness to that because that's pretty important. High school graduation rate, similar. This is the percent of Arizona high school students graduating in 4 years. So if you graduate in 5 years, you don't count in this number. Or in many cases, students that have a learning disability have additional years that they go to high school. They would not be counted in the high school graduation rate if it takes more than 4 years to get a high school degree. So that's important to know. And again, available at a wide array of geographies. Some of my favorite data are the post-high school enrollment numbers. These come from the Arizona Board of Regents. And the definition here is Arizona district and charter high school students who graduate from high school and attend a post-secondary institution within 1 year of graduating high school. And so, if you take a couple of years off and then you go back to college, you don't count in the post-high school enrollment numbers in the progress meter. Again, available to a lot of geographies. And the reason I love this data set is because the suppression rule is 6 or more students. So this is much better in a lot of ways than, other data because, in a lot of smaller schools or school districts, especially particularly with minority populations, you might not have, 10 students or 11 students in order to show that data. But with college going rates, you only need to have 6 to show it. So that's pretty cool and makes that data really useful. Opportunity youth, this is the percent of 16 to 24-year-olds that are not going to school or working. This data is also known as the disconnected youth number, which you'll see on a more national basis. And, this is a particular challenge for us in rural Arizona and among certain demographic groups. The challenge with opportunity youth data and also post-secondary attainment, both of them come from the same source, which is the U.S. Census Bureau Community Public Use Micro Data Series, is that, the sample size is particularly a challenge here. We use the 1-year data set. there aren't enough data to show all demographic groups for most years. And also we can only break it down to certain more populated counties because of the limitations of the data. So that presents a little bit of a challenge. One thing we do to try to address that with post-secondary attainment is we have sort of two ways of measuring that. As you probably know, the most official post-secondary attainment number is anyone who age 25 to 64 who has a 2-year, 4-year or advanced degree or a professional certificate or license. So that's the official metric that on which the 60% goal is measured. There is an alternative measure that we use, which is those who have a 2-year, 4-year degree or an advanced degree. And those data are a little bit easier to get to for smaller communities, smaller demographics, and rural kind of counties. And so we do use that. You're able on the CFA progress meter to select that one for some of the interactive data. So that's something to be aware of. Our last one I'll cover here in detail is the teacher pay metric. This is different from the others because this is really more of an input rather than an output. All of the 7 other kind of progress meter metrics measure how are we doing as outcomes. And teacher pay is really more about, how do we retain teachers and what is our pay compared to other states? As you know, it's the ranking of where we are as a state compared to the other 50 states. And as you'll probably know, and I'll give a quick overview of this, we have been last in elementary school, and more recently we've kind of bumped up a bit for secondary school teachers. So that's been nice. So this data is also available for certain counties, but only for ones that are more populous because of the way the data are collected and analyzed. All right, so here's the nerdy part of the program. So I'm going to share some of the fun stuff. And this is a little bit of the process. I thought it would be helpful because some people have questions about the data that can be answered by understanding how it's analyzed. So, with the progress meter analysis, we analyze all of the data in different ways. The 4 that have the most kind of local data available are 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, high school graduation, and post-high school enrollment. Those ones are very robust data sets. And the way those data are analyzed is shown on the screen. So first we figure out where are all the schools. We put them in cities. As you know, school districts boundaries and city boundaries don't always overlap. In fact, they rarely overlap. So you often have school districts that span into multiple cities and towns. So we first geolocate those schools with their actual physical location, latitude, longitude. And we work closely with the Morrison Institute for Public Policy, who help us with this and with some of our other analysis. So they geolocate those schools. Then we identify what city they're in. Then we secure the school level data, preferably, and in the case of all of these, the unredacted data, meaning we can see the school level results down to below that 10 student threshold or 5 student threshold because of a data sharing agreement we have in place. Then we remove the virtual schools from those calculations because in many cases that kind of skews the data. Virtual school students can go to school from anywhere in the state, not necessarily in those geographies. So we take them out. For 3rd grade and 8th grade reading, that's taken out from the city only. But in high school graduation, we remove it from city and county both. And then we aggregate those to the city and to the county, which I'll explain in just a minute. Then we resuppress the data according to the suppression rules, which I talked about. So if there's less than 11 for the 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, high school graduation, we suppress those. If there's less than 6 for post-high school enrollment, we suppress those. Do some verification, some quality control. And then those data are published. And most often they're published in the late fall or early winter, depending on how quickly we can secure the data. So that's sort of how that works. And And, you know, a lot of people say, well, why do you need unredacted data? And this is a great example of why. We didn't always analyze with unredacted data. We didn't have a data sharing agreement for the first couple of years of the analysis. And so we had a lot of error because of this. So, you know, this is an example of 5 made up high schools. And how the data is aggregated. So how it's aggregated is all of these high schools are in a certain city. Those are geolocated to city 1, I'm calling it. We have the number of enrolled and number of graduated students. This is the high school graduation metric. So the number of enrolled students is added up. The number who graduated in 4 years is added up. Then you do the math to get a graduation rate of 75%. So you can see that there are some counts here that are less than 11. The 8 students, excuse me, I clicked 8 students, the 10 students, the 5 students. And so those, if we used redacted data, would not count. So on the right side of the column here, you can see if we were to analyze it using data that has already been suppressed, then we would get a very different graduation rate. We would get a 64% rate than if we use the unredacted data at 75. So that's why it's so important that we have access to the data that is not suppressed, so we can do a very accurate analysis. And then, of course, at the end of the day, we do have to suppress it. So if this city 1 ended up with a count of less than 11 in any of those columns at the aggregated sum, then we would still have to suppress it, which we do in many cases for small communities. But it's a much better system than than what we had early on. I'll quickly go over some tools and resources. Looks like I have just a couple of minutes. Arizona Education Progress Meter is available on CFA's website and Education Forward Arizona's website. Both of them are fantastic digital sort of interactive data tools. Use them both. They're both great. We've been doing a lot of work recently at CFA to make the data more accessible for people to dig into. So I'm just going to give a very, very quick kind of demonstration of some of that capability. This is our Education Progress Meter website. You can see that each of the indicators showing where we're at in the most recent year, what that trend looks like. And then if you click on any one of these, you'll go into that page. You can click on any city, county, or state in Arizona, and it'll show you how we're doing in that given year in those metrics. So that's pretty cool. More recent years have less data because of data being analyzed at different times for different measures, which we can talk about some other time. And then we have this really great tool at the very bottom where you can pick literally any school, any county, any place to compare. I know we're going to have a presentation a little bit later for Avondale, so I can pick those and compare them with other places. And then I can choose what year I want to compare. Most recent data for 8th grade math and 3rd grade reading is 2022. I can pick the topics. I can choose whatever subgroups that I want to compare. And then, it will allow me to look at those data across that subgroup, across those topics. And I can even export that data by clicking this button, and it will give me a spreadsheet of those selected data, which is pretty useful and pretty fun, actually. So if you're a nerd, this is great. You can really enjoy this. Recently, we updated our teacher pay data to give you an interactive map that you can explore. So you can pick literally any occupation, not just teachers, but you can pick, urban and regional planners, which is me, and you can compare pay across any geographies that you would like, and it will compare all of those states that you select for different career points: early, mid, late, and the highest sort of 10%, and it'll rank them, to show you how you're doing as compared to those other states. So that's pretty useful, and that's in the teacher pay, area. All of these other ones have fantastic, interactive dashboards as well that you can dig through the data. You can compare the counties, and you can do some more interactive work with the in the tables and even export the data. So, you know, these are just some ideas about how you can use the data. You know, there are any number of ways that you can. And, you know, it can be really, really useful to get a sense for how you're doing at your school. How's your district doing? How is the city doing? How is the county doing? And then how are we doing as a state? And, you know, hopefully what that means is that everyone will take some ownership over these important topics and work to help address disparities and help improve the overall education system for all Arizonans. So I see that it's 12:30, and I think I'm done for now. So thank you all again for being here, and thank you Education Forward Arizona for the opportunity to make this presentation today.
And just one really quick follow-up question from someone in our audience. They just wanted to know, is there any homeschool high school graduation data included in any of these numbers?
Absolutely. So many people who do homeschooling partner with one or more homeschool organizations, and the names are escaping me right now off the top of my head, but you can actually look up, I'm trying to remember just one because I recently did this for one. So you can look up those you know, homeschool partner organizations. There's usually a name. I think Sequoia maybe Academy might be one, and it will show you kind of how students do that are within that if you will, that family of institutions or within that partnership. So you know, that is available because they are registered as an LEA, and so the data are available for many of them. Now I can't speak to all of them, but it is possible to capture some of those. You can't look them up by demographic, you know, homeschooled student, but you can look up the institutions that they partner with and see how they're doing.
Ian, I got asked this question before this whole presentation, and I checked with you beforehand. But if a CTE student gets a certificate, that certificate doesn't get counted until they reach the age of 25 for the attainment stuff. Am I correct?
Yeah, so I mean, the way the attainment's calculated is the U.S. Census asks everybody, you know, well, the selected panel of people, do you have a degree or certificate? And if they say yes, they count for attainment. And if they say no, they don't. But we only ask, people are only asked if they're 25 to 64 in that bucket. So that's correct. If someone has a certificate and they're not yet 25, they don't count in the attainment number yet. But depending on how they got that certificate, they could be counted in the college going rates, you know, for whatever high school graduation year that they graduated. So I hope that answers your question. So yeah, it's a weird little lag where certificates don't really count or degrees until someone is 25 for the attainment number. Or 24, actually, sorry, 24.
Perfect. Thank you, Ian. Thank you very much. That was excellent. And we will get the presentations and the recording out to everybody in a week or so after this, after today. Our next speaker is Dr. Teresa Leyba Ruiz. She is the Chief Advocacy and Programs Officer at Education Forward Arizona, and she was recently appointed as a commissioner on President Biden's Advisory Commission on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity for Hispanics. So she's going to talk today about the disparity in the progress meter data, and she's going to provide a little information about the new commission that she serves on and its plans. So take it away, Terry.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. And, you know, I am a data nerd, so I am super excited that Ian shared all of that great data information with us. Yay for data nerds and math teachers. So I want to talk to you a little bit about everything to gain. Rich talked a little bit about this as our big campaign. Arizona has everything to gain. And I will say that our nation has everything to gain when we get more and more people educated after high school. But I want to talk about a shared framework to communicate the value of education after high school by knowing who we serve in the state of Arizona. So I can advance this. and it's not advancing. There we go. So who is Arizona? Who do we serve here? Well, in Arizona, we're a beautiful, diverse group. 54% of our population is white, non-Hispanic, 32% are Hispanic, 5% Black, 4% Native American, and 4% Asian Pacific Islander. And one thing to really celebrate is that Arizona is the 4th largest Latino population in the United States. And that almost 50% of our kiddos in K-12 are of Hispanic heritage. So Ian talked to you about our progress meters, and this is really important because when you think about who we serve and the progress meter that Ian shared with us, I'm going to dive deeper into 3 of these progress meters just for time, but I encourage you to go to our website or to Center for Future of Arizona, and you can drill into each of these metrics and understand how we serve our population of students. The information I'm about to share with you is not by any means a way to disparage our students or our educators, but more as a call to help. That this is going to take all of us as a community to come together to support our students, our educators, our administrators, so that we can move the needle on this. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper here, and I'll start with high school graduation. So right now we're at a 76% graduation rate. Our goal is 90%. The beauty is when we disaggregate this data, it tells the tale of how we're doing as a state. Who is being served, who's missing out, who's not at the table here to have opportunities that come with the high school graduation. So we see that our Asian students are knocking it out of the park. 4% of our population here, our Asian students are graduating at a rate of 91%. Our white students at 83%. We're at the state average of 76, and we see what happens here. 72% of our Hispanic students, 70% of our African American students, and 64% of our Native American students. Again, this is not to disparage any community, but it's rather than just a reality check and a call to action. What can we as a community do to influence the graduation rate? As we look a little bit what happens after high school, as Ian said, this is what happens within the first year of graduating high school. We track this data. We're shooting for a 70% post-high school enrollment of some type of education after high school. And right now, as a state, we're at 47%. But we can see where when we disaggregate the data, again, it tells the tale of who's missing, who's not at the table, who's not having that road onto post-high school education and enrollment. I'll let that sit for a little bit. It really starts to tell the tale. One thing I found really interesting, as a state average, 47%, our African-American students are at about that same 47% rate. Our Hispanic students are at 41%, and our Native American students are at 32%. Let that sink in a little bit. When we disaggregate the data, it really tells the tale of how we can drill in and narrowly focus our attention. The reason why this is important is because we know that Arizona has everything to gain. We're going to say that over and over and over again in our economy, in our workforce, in our communities, individually to the student and to their families. We know that in one generation, how life-changing it is for that family to break some cycles of poverty and to have social economic opportunities just expand. So when we look at our attainment rate, remember our goal is 60%, and right now we are at 48%. It's interesting, and Ian can talk a little bit more about this. The data, we can only disaggregate it for our white population and for our Hispanic population. And so I'm sure there's a reason why, and Ian could probably drill into why that is. But we know that, college attainment and enrollment rates, are radically stratified for racial and social economic categories. So again, something to keep in mind. The interesting thing is that we as a state of Arizona are actually doing slightly better than our nation. So as a nation, a couple numbers to share with you. Across the nation, 46% of white non-Hispanic adults hold a degree. We're at right now 57% for our white non-Hispanic adults. And 24% of Hispanic adults hold some type of degree or certificate. Right now, the state of Arizona, we're at 31%. So slightly better than the national average, but still not good enough. When we look at this big gap here, that's what we would call an equity gap. And this aligns with a recent comment from President Biden to ensure that our nation reaches the ambitious goals we have set for our economy to thrive, as well as to ensure equal access to opportunity for all. We must enable Hispanic and Latino students to reach their highest potential through our nation's schools and institutions of higher education. That was kind of our marching orders. I was thrilled and honored to be selected to serve as a commissioner for the President's Advisory Commission on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity for Hispanics. I am one of 21 commissioners across the country, and our mission is to be able to make recommendations. So this was an exciting moment just to share with you. On May 10th, I got to meet Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, our Vice President, Kamala Harris. She actually swore us in this beautiful room in the Executive Office building, where I was sworn in along with 20 other commissioners to serve as to make recommendations to the president through the Secretary of Education. We broke up into 4 different committees. I serve on the Higher Education Committee for Hispanic Serving Institutions. There's over 570 HSIs across our country. As a retired president at Glendale Community College, which is a recognized Hispanic serving institution, which is one of the reasons why I was nominated to this role and then selected because of my experience as a community college president. And then the other committees, workforce development and economic opportunity, public awareness, and strategic partnerships. So as a commission, we meet regularly. We had our first meeting in May. We had a virtual meeting in July. We meet bi-weekly for committee meetings. And then we have a public full commission meeting taking place right here in Arizona at ASU on September 12th. Because it is a public commission meeting, you will see notifications will go out and you will be invited to attend or Zoom in if you're interested. The ultimate goal, of course, is for us to make recommendations to President Biden through the Secretary of Education by next September 2024, which you might be aware is also Hispanic Heritage Month. And that's the reason why we're shooting for that date. So we have a year to come together, listen, learn, make recommendations to help us move the needle for across our country. But I'm going to focus in on what are we doing here in Arizona, which is why disaggregating that data is so important. Again, not to disparage a group, but for us to call attention to who's not at the table, who's not getting these opportunities, and how can we as a community come together and support our schools, support our teachers, support our administrators, support our students, so that we can have everything to gain in Arizona when we educate more and more. You saw this already, but I'm going to put it up again, this great slide from Rich. How can you join us? Well, join our team, be one of our advocates, be a supporter. And I'll leave that up there so that you can take out your cameras, your phones, and click away. Donna, that's all I have. And I did that in under 10 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, you did. And so Betsy has about 11 minutes. She can probably go 12 or 13. Dr. Betsy Hargrove is the superintendent of Avondale Elementary School District. And she has had, I wanted to end on a high note to give people ideas of some good things that are happening to address the issues in the Arizona Progress Meter. And she is doing a great job in Avondale. So I asked her to talk about a program that they have there called Project Momentum. So take it away, Betsy.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you to our prior presenters who really framed the situation that we have in the state of Arizona. And I appreciated many of the comments that were made around, this isn't shaming, this isn't blame, this is reality, this is the data that we have, and this is our starting point. And in Avondale, we talk an awful lot around the fact that our starting point is our springboard. And every single day we have a new starting point and we move forward with that idea of continuous improvement, and that is what's going to get us all there. Thank you, Donna, teeing us up around Project Momentum. In Avondale, we call it GEARS, Growing Educators Achieving Results with Students. And we were fortunate enough to be contacted by a group from Fairfax, Virginia. You might say, Fairfax, Virginia, what does that have to do with Arizona? Really, quite frankly, this is when you don't ask why, you just say thank you. But they reached out to Avondale and said, we have an opportunity for you to take some continuous improvement work that we've done in Fairfax, that we've seen tremendous results with, and we want a proof of concept here in Arizona. We have a public-private partnership that we'd like to have Avondale engage with. At which point it fit all of the expectations and the direction that Avondale was going, and we were able to engage with what they call Project Momentum, and I'm sure you've heard an awful lot about that most recently, as the Arizona State Board of Ed took that on as a continuous improvement model. Very proud of the work that we've done, and certainly would advocate for anyone and everyone to be able to do this, to be able to reach those goals for that limitless future that we're all seeking for our children. The premise behind Project Momentum is to take a look at what happens with students in all of our schools, and in this case, taking a look at how that layers across various factors, and in this case, free and reduced price meals. And so when they took a look at Avondale's data at the time, and this was back in 2015 was our benchmark year, they were noticing the fact that Avondale was getting exactly the output expected for the input that was received. So when you think about funding and think about resources that are available to school districts in order to effectuate change and positive results for children and learning, the outputs that Avondale were getting matched exactly. Their premise was, if we infuse just a little bit more resource, a little bit more dollars toward those efforts, we can create change. And so just taking a look at this next one, and again, this is just a piece of data. All the schools across Arizona, happens to be math in 2017, 2018. That gold box that circles what we would call the rarefied schools, the schools that were getting far more outcomes than others based off of the same level of input and same demographics in theory. So when you start looking at that, it starts giving a very different picture of data. It says, you know what? It takes away the excuses. It takes away the, oh no, let me tell you about our community. Oh no, let me tell you about how much we get for resources. Well, the bottom line is, there are outliers who are demonstrating success, and how do we create opportunities to be able to replicate and duplicate the actions that those outliers are doing? And that is the entire premise behind Project Momentum's work, infusing a little bit more resources and providing opportunities for educators to come together and share those really good practices. And I'm going to say that again, really good practices, because in Avondale, we don't do best practices because we're not ever done. If you say best, it means we're done. We're not ever done. We're in a continuous improvement model to be able to ensure every one of our children have that limitless future that they so deserve. The focus of Project Momentum out of the gate really was building those collaborative teams, making sure that what's happening in every single classroom is high quality, that tier 1 instruction, that the lesson planning is aligned, and literally if you go from one classroom to the next classroom to the next classroom, that while it doesn't look exactly the same, because our teachers certainly are artists and they have a craft and infuse their own personalities into it, what the outcome expectations for children, however, is to ensure that they're meeting and exceeding those standards, as well as developing system support for our educators, both in our classroom, our site leaders that are leading that effort at each one of our school sites, as well as across our district. And then making sure that we're monitoring it, making sure that what we are teaching and expecting are being met and exceeded. We do that through a short cycle of improvement. I'm sure everyone on this podcast, or excuse me, in this presentation would understand this, but the short of it is, what do we expect kids to know and be able to do? What are we going to accept as evidence that they can do that? How are we going to best deliver this information to them? And then most importantly, and I think this is a piece that we really want to spend time on, what do we do if they can't do it? And equally as important, what do we do if they can? So we want to make sure that we're differentiating that instruction for every one of our students to be able to have them exceeding their goals. So in Avondale, we started with our mission. And that mission is that every student grows as a thinker, problem solver, and communicator to pursue their future without limits because they deserve it. Well, in order to do that, we needed to break down those walls and those barriers that are naturally happening in a district. One school and another school up the street, another school up the street, different communities, et cetera. Well, the bottom line is what's happening in my classroom has to demonstrate efficacy for the students in my classroom, just like up the street, just across the street in another school. In order for that to happen, we need to make sure that every one of our teachers are growing as thinkers, problem solvers, and communicators, and replicating that across our leaders. Because it takes every single one of us coming together collectively with that joint accountability to all of our students here in Avondale. And that has been a key foundation to the work that we've done here. In addition to that, we have our gear structure, and the gear structure really aligned with those 5 focus that I initially shared with you. That guaranteed viable curriculum, making sure that the resources that we have in front of our children are truly on point, and that our educators have had the opportunity for the professional development to be able to engage that and to present it incredibly well. In addition to that, we need to monitor what's happening, making sure that we understand where children are when they start, where they are in the middle, and where they are at the end, to be able to truly deliver that instruction that's very specific to their needs. That's where those intervention and extension activities come in. As I said, remember, equally as important, what happens if they can't do it? What happens if they can? And how are we going to address that? And how are we going to take that to the next level? And then just making sure that we use that information to be able to inform what's happening the next day. We are going to be better today than we were yesterday. We'll be better tomorrow than we are today. If we live and lead by that, then we have positive outcomes for our children on an ongoing basis. I wanted to show this piece to you because, as I said, we call it GEARS, Growing Educators Achieving Results with Students. The overarching foundational work comes from Project Momentum, and that is a term that you'll hear across Arizona, and I hope for many, many years to come as my children grow and have children of their own, that their children are impacted by this work, because it's incredibly powerful. But the reason I wanted to show this, literally from the left-hand side where they're working together with those gears, to the gears that are specific to Avondale, where we use cluster, DART, which is Data Action Response Team, and site level collaborative teams, to the next one that's down at the bottom, where site CTs are added, where quarterly planning are added, where COSs are added. This is an iterative process. And I think that's what appeals most to us here in Avondale, when I think that has yielded the results that we so seek. That is to ensure that every single day we're growing and developing. And I believe just even by how we mark the work that we're doing and archive and gather the data around the work that we're doing and demonstrate it visually, that demonstrates that iterative process that is so important to it. This actually is our most recent. Obviously, adding the movement part makes it incredibly exciting, right? But it demonstrates how each one of those works together, and without one or another, or if one is stuck or not working the way it should, we need to address that in order to make sure the whole system flows, because each one of them has a piece to the puzzle of the success of our students, of our staff, of our community. Just real quickly, Data Action Response Team that I think is very unique to Avondale is the fact that rather than having just site CTs or in site clusters where our educators are learning at a site specific to what's happening to their children, if we're going to have collective accountability across all of our district for all of our students, we need to make sure that we are consistent with the work and the expectations and elevating the opportunities to share that across our district. So every other week, all of our staff deploy to various sites. So if I'm a 5th grade math teacher, I go to a site and I'm meeting with 5th grade math teachers. And we're talking about the content that we're delivering and our deep understanding around that and our common formative assessments in order to say, hey, Donna, you did unbelievably well at this. Can you share with the group what it is that you did so that we can apply that in our school and in our classroom to make sure that our students get it, because we didn't have the same results that you did, and opening up those conversations to be able to grow and learn together. In addition to that, we have site CTs. And at that point, you're really having those conversations about your individual students at a grade level. And you're talking about how we're working with them, developing those interventions, sharing students across our classes to be able to make sure that we do impact what happens if they don't and what happens if they do understand what's being delivered in the classroom. Quarterly planning is that system that we talked about or I shared, that the district works with our teams and they come in and they provide opportunities to process what's going to happen next, what's coming up in this next quarter to continue that learning trajectory that we're on. And then cluster really is about what best pedagogical, I'm going to rephrase that, what really good pedagogical approach are we going to use in our classrooms to be able to deliver this instruction, and what is it we expect from our children as we do that? And again, looking at our kids and what they're doing rather than what the adult is doing, because it really is the reflection of what kids do in response to adults is critically important for us to take a look at. And then cycles of success. Cycles of success is the opportunity for our district to develop theories of practice, to be able to say, this is a theory of improvement. If we do this one thing, we're going to be able to yield better results. And we have site teams and district teams who come together, again, around problems of practice and how we're going to best meet the needs of the individual educators who then are going to be driving that instruction with our students. And that goes on throughout the year as cycles are iterated and moved forward. Project Momentum Arizona, I'm back up for a second. So Avondale engaged this back in 2014-15. Each year, various districts have joined to continue to grow that proof of concept. Project Momentum Arizona wants to make sure that all of the children in all of those districts have an opportunity to maximize their limitless future. That is applied across all of the sites that they are engaged with, and going to continue to build this out over time. This gives the really kind of the overview of what happens, the fact that we're building strong foundations for all of our children and our educators in the sites, developing those effective teams, those teacher leaders. We're truly empowering and providing agency for our teachers, as well as making sure that we have tier 1 instruction that is solid in every one of our classrooms, which then leads into opportunities for developing strong tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. This data set just provides you an opportunity of what has happened with various schools and districts across the state. If you look at Avondale, second one from the middle, you can see that our foundational year, our set year, was 2014-15. And as you go through those years, you can go all the way over to the end. The plus 14 represents the percentage points that Avondale has outpaced what is happening in the state. So if you look all the way down at the bottom, the growth over time is that we were at plus 14 in English language arts. Being able to outpace what is happening in the state is truly the goal of Project Momentum. You cannot close an achievement gap unless you're outpacing what's happening around you. And so if we can continue to demonstrate that, then that achievement gap gets lower and lower and lower, shorter and shorter and shorter. Even through the pandemic, we were able to demonstrate that. Same thing, whoops. I apologize, I clicked on it by accident.
Betsy, we need to wrap it up because.
Oh, that's perfect. The next one is the math, and then the last one is the idea of teacher efficacy, the idea of collective accountability, and the idea of we're never done. We're going to continue this work until all of our children have that limitless future.
Thank you, Betsy. The short part of this is that all of Betsy's schools in her district have increased and gone from a D and 1 F when they started to all A's and B's now. Am I right, Betsy? Or you were before the pandemic?
You are correct, and we still are all above average.
Yay. So there's hope, and there's a way to make it happen so that everybody succeeds. And Betsy, thank you very much for the presentation. You did a great job. I think we can see your calendar, so you might want to quit sharing.
I am. But you can see what I'm doing.
Huh?
I said you can see what I'm doing now.
Yes, we got it. And now we're going to wrap up with Laura Rosensweet from our staff, who is another community impact manager from Northern Arizona, and she's going to talk about what's coming up.
Great, thanks, Donna. I'm going to just share that our next Power Hour is going to be happening on September 28th in the same space, of course, Zoom, from noon to 1. And this time it's going to be on bonds and overrides as we get ready to enter the fall election season. So we'll have a couple of excellent guest presenters here to talk about what bonds and overrides are and how they impact local education in your community and then around the state. So we really hope that you can join us for that. I did place the link to register for that Zoom session in the chat. It got a little funny and it's kind of small, but we'll of course send it out. And just as a reminder for everyone that attended the session live or registered, next week I'll send out the recording and the PowerPoints so that you can look back, share them out with others, and then encourage people that you know to join us in that Power Hour on September 28th. We really appreciate all of our presenters today, everyone that attended. You all just make this such a statewide effort to move education forward in Arizona. Donna, is there anything you wanted to wrap up with?
Not that I can think of, just thank you to everybody. It was great to see everybody, and you have a great long weekend, and we'll see you in September.
Bye, everyone.